Welcome to Wednesdays with Willa. I am your host, Willa White, and this is my weekly podcast show that airs on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, Willa White Medium. It also goes out on my YouTube channel and the Willydale Assembly Facebook page, so you've got lots of places for you to view. And I encourage you to like, share, subscribe, follow, all of those good things so I can keep episodes coming to you. This is actually year 8 of Wednesdays with Willa. So I've got so many great episodes for you to binge watch to the heart's content. People tell me all the time that they consider it to be a treasure trove of educational information and fun. And I typically have a special guest on the show, and we talk about a topic relating to spiritualism, mediumship, healing, faith, family, or more. And it's always a pleasure to have a guest on from the United Kingdom. I've got Penny Hayward here today. Hello, Penny.
Hey, nice to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have this conversation with you today about
Mhm.
tag team mediumship. And Penny Hayward is an excellent person to talk about this with because she's had the experience of it. And for those of you who don't know who Penny Hayward is, I would just tell you that she is a medium from the United Kingdom. She's
Mhm.
also a tutor at Arthur Findlay College and a course organizer there. And she is part of the Spiritualists National Union and does a lot of important work there, including research into history and mediumship. And you also have been here to Lilydale before to present and be a workshop leader.
I
And
have.
that was so
Hmm.
wonderful last summer when you were here and we got to see each
Hmm.
other in person and have a wonderful chat together. And I'm so glad that Penny is able to be on the show today because she brings a, the right essence of understanding to mediumship and educates people throughout the world. You teach all over the
Hmm.
place, you know, Australia, the UK, and other countries. And we always
Yeah.
love it when you're able to make it to the United States, which we hope will happen soon.
Yay.
Yes, yes. And today we're going to be talking about tag team mediumship. It's
Hmm.
very different from, let's say, solo mediumship.
Hmm.
Uh, we can talk about the differences between what I'll call solo mediumship, one medium, and tag team mediumship, which is two mediums. And
Hmm.
it's something you don't see very often, but Penny has done a lot of. So where should we
Yes.
start with that? I'm going to put my stuff in your hands.
Wow. I don't know. Well, I suppose we could also mention that um, in the US, you call it tag team mediumship, but in the UK, we actually call it like a double link. But then in the US, you have a different term for double link. So I don't want to confuse anyone. So if I accidentally say double link, I mean two mediums and not two spirit contacts. Uh, but yeah, I've had experience with it. And as you know, I was working or I do work with Richard Stuttle, who's a spirit artist and a fantastic spirit artist, if I may say. And we would work together by connecting with the same spirit communicator. And the way that communicator presents through Richard is with the vision that he draws on the board. But Richard also contributes with some information. So he may start with some information about the communicator, and then I pick it up and carry on from there. And depending on the type of communicator and the type of link that we have, will depend on whether he adds more information or adds a little at the end, or we sort of like bounce between each other. So I've noticed that it sort of depends on the communicator, the type of information coming, what's going on, and and we flow with it, I think is the way that I would put it. So I suppose some people would be thinking, but how do you do that? And so I guess the best way that I can describe it from my perception is that Richard and I are in like a bubble of power, a bubble of energy, and the spirit world comes in on that bubble of energy that we have, that we create, I suppose. And Richard is then aware of them, but quite often at the same time that he knows whether it's a lady or a man, I have that feeling, but I wait for Richard to get started before I fully connect, because otherwise every now and then there might be a tricky situation where Richard will have one person and I may have another, but it's been very rare that that has happened. So it becomes like it sort of becomes fluid, or it becomes something that you almost dance with energetically between both mediums and the spirit communicator. So I could only imagine that for the spirit world, it's an exciting thing to do because they can maybe get across more information, because there will be things I'll understand and perceive better than maybe the other person, like Richard, and vice versa. Richard may perceive and understand some things better than I would, but we have collective information as well that we share. So, in terms of working with a spirit artist, it allows him the freedom to spend time on working up, building up the face and any other information that's going to appear on the page. So, I've also worked with some other people in other ways, but I think that's a good start. Is that a good
Yeah.
start?
Oh, that's an excellent beginning to help people understand a bit more about that tag team mediumship approach. And
Hmm.
as you said, each medium brings their own understanding, their own filter to what
Hmm.
the information is. And some people have strong soul senses in one category, right?
Mm.
And another can bring the other essence. I've seen Richard and Penny do tag team mediumship. And yes, Richard will usually start and he'll declare, you know, whether it's a gentleman or a lady, and then
Mm.
he'll start the construction of the face. And anybody who knows anything about art knows that it's very difficult to just do it like that. You're kind of almost
Mm.
like a street artist having to go
Yeah.
fast because there's a time limit and having to have that flash and put the impression on the page. Most people are not able to do even a stick figure. So
Yeah.
he has that. But then, I've seen you while he's doing this, you're not really looking at the paper of what he's doing. You're
No.
starting to step into the power of your connection with the spirit communicator,
Mm.
and there's a, a thoughtful expression on your face as you're entering into that, and then it's as if you kind of pick it up. So
Mm.
the two of you are like passing the ball, the
Yeah.
or the talking stick between you as you do this, and that you typically bring in some of the other characteristics. Some of them are physical, but usually that's more Richard's thing. I
Yeah.
know it's more of the personality and their reactivity, and then also their connection with
Mm.
the recipient.
That's
But
right.
the other thing that I have to make the distinction of is there is an American style versus British style of mediumship. And so when
Yeah.
Richard and Penny do this, they don't have a particular recipient that they
Mm.
know they're going to initially. This
Mm.
is something that is unfolding, and everybody's kind of all ears and waiting to see whether this spirit communicator is for them once they've brought through the identifiers, the
Mm.
evidence about that spirit communicator. So I just want to make sure that people have that distinction as well. It's another
Yeah.
layer to your particular tag team mediumship that you're doing. And
That's right. And look, we work that way because the communicator is the most important, um I'll say, person in the room, even though they've not got a physical body.
the spotlight's
And
on them.
yeah, yeah, they're the client. And I think we're potentially in danger of working psychically to somebody, if we were to sort of look at an audience and go, oh, lady over there with the red cardigan on, and most people go,
Yeah, I think you
check
have to
what they're
figure out what they're
wearing.
wearing.
And I'm coming to you when I have XYZ. And so in the British style, we can go direct or we can start with the communicator. We can work both ways. Um, and and I think perhaps with the spirit art, there's a perhaps a more of a danger of connecting with the energy of the recipient and then picking up
That's true.
information as opposed to working with the spirit world.
Mhm.
So we bring through information and evidence about the spirit communicator, and sometimes I'll know where and who I need to go to, or an area, or sometimes I'll be who understands that.
That's true.
It just depends on the flow. So yes, there is a different style.
Yes.
You're absolutely right, but sometimes we're a bit flexible as well.
Sure. Yes, it's good.
Um,
And I know I've seen some other Americans do tag team mediumship as well,
mhm,
without spirit art. And usually there's one that starts, and sometimes I've known people who even do this in private sessions, that
mhm,
the first half is one medium connecting with the recipient's spirit loved ones,
right.
and then the second half. And so it's kind of like a different way of thinking, because
Yeah,
you're thinking having a one-on-one session, right, with a client or with a recipient. But in
yeah.
terms of this, I come very close to this as a teacher of mediumship, because often
Mm.
I'm in the breakout session rooms of Zoom classes that I teach. And within a few seconds, I get into the stream of energy, the current of the
Yeah.
communication of what's transpiring. So I'm also picking up information from those spirit communicators when that's happening. I'm not then trying to overshadow what the student is doing. I'm not going to say that, but I can see whether I feel the accuracy and the depth and
That's
breadth
right.
of that communication. And
Mm,
I do feel that that's a necessary component, that you then put that into tag team mediumship and
mm.
be able to jump into the same stream or wave of
Yeah.
energy at the same time. It's like you've linked hands, linked energy, as it were, and say, let's jump into this together. It's kind of like a
Mm.
Mary Poppins, let's jump into the chalk picture together experience, right? And
Yeah.
then you have this rapport that you build with a spirit communicator. And
Mm,
would you say, even with solo mediumship, for me, it's a bit like we're sitting down to have a chat together.
mm.
And some people, even if you have multiple spirit communicators, one will be the primary spirit communicator, and then you've got
Yeah.
others. In the tag team mediumship, you're focusing on one spirit communicator, one link.
Yes. More often than not, it is just the one because it's a shorter session, isn't it?
Yes. Mhm.
So you need to get across as much information as possible, but leave enough time for a face to appear and any information around that as well, of course. And so you can't go too long, but you can't go too short, and it's not really enough time to bring in lots of information about someone else. However, I think on occasion there's been perhaps an acknowledgement, oh, and Father is here, or
Yes.
and so is
I can
here. So
see
you're
that.
aware of the presence, but you're not going into the presence because it's just the need to acknowledge that information for the recipient, perhaps. So yeah, so it's quite interesting, and I was going to say I have done, as you call it, tag team mediumship online, where I've been here in the UK and somebody's been in another country or at the other end of the same country, and and we've given information bouncing between us. So I think the intelligence of the spirit world to be able to do that is pretty magical, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to be physically in the presence of two mediums and a communicator, and I absolutely love doing that with Richard. But it's equally interesting and fun to do it when you're online,
Yeah.
and to be able to connect to the same communicator. And absolutely, as you said, when you're a teacher, part of our role is to tune into what's going on, but not interfere unless they need help or unless, there's something happening that they need to use as a learning point.
Yes.
So as you say, I call it moving into the flow, or like you say, holding hands, or you know, it is just that flow of energy that you're sort of uh tapping into and being aware of and following along and understanding what's going on, which is, I think, pretty important when you're a teacher. And as important if you're an assessor of other mediums, because of course Lilydale has assessments and we have assessments at the college, Arthur Findlay College, and in the Spiritualists National Union. So you have to have that ability to be able to um, uh, be aware of the connection, but not interfere or disrupt energetically with that.
Hmm.
That's absolutely right. So it's I find it pretty fascinating actually that there is this way of varied ways of communicating with the spirit world, but more importantly, the spirit world communicating with us. And, to be working with someone like a spirit artist who's being very visual with them, and then to work with another medium alongside them who is using their natural sensitivities. And the amount of times that Richard and I, in our case, have gotten the same information, um, and know that one or the other is absolutely right, or that there's more information to come, that maybe I haven't perceived and he does, or vice versa. So it's pretty extraordinary, and I kind of want to tell a little story about
Please do.
a um a really I think it was a really interesting communicator, and the way it worked between us, and I really loved it. It's one of my highlights, one of my favorites. And so Richard sort of put down, as you know, you've seen him work, it looks like squiggles and a bit of a smudge on the page. I call it squiggles and a smudge, which he doesn't like. And I don't blame him, but it appears that way to somebody who may not be very artistic. And and I can see like eyes and a sort of an outline maybe of some features when he does that, which always fascinates me. Um, and one day he did this and he goes, well, I've got someone here. And he sort of talked around a few things, but he never said whether they were male or female. And went over to you, Pen. And I went, thanks, Rich, And I was definitely connected in with this same communicator because there was this sort of almost male, female, like which one is it? And and all of a sudden it clicked in. And I said, it's a lovely young man. This is a lovely young man, and I know that unfortunately he took his life, but he was a female impersonator. And I can see him with the wig and I can see him with the outfits, and so it went. And then all of a sudden it all clicked into place for both of us. And Richard did this absolutely stunning drawing of this young man, but then with this big, bouffant hairstyle. So you could see both male, female. It was absolutely brilliant. It really turned out so well. But that shows how the communicator was trying to communicate something important about them, that they were a young man, but they were a female impersonator as well. And so I think there's so much intelligence in the subtleties of the information that the spirit world gives us. And I think that's just magical,
Yeah,
really.
that's a great example of it. And
Mm,
it'd be so easy and tempting to disregard that,
mm.
right? But you were
Yeah.
able to make that distinction, and so in that instance, did I hear you correctly? Did Richard end up having two drawings on the page, or
No,
just the
just the
one?
one.
Just the one, but
Yeah.
you could feel the distinction of the two.
You could see, yeah, it was
Okay,
it was brilliantly done. So you could see the structure of the face of the young man and his features, but there was a sort of slightly effeminate quality to his
to the
features, and he
rest.
had short hair, so that was you could see that. But then there was this sort of, sort of rather big, like almost Doris Day type, but bigger hairstyle, pinked up. And so it wasn't all filled in, but you got the lines and the energy and the color of
A
it.
few more
And
squiggles.
yeah, much better than the squiggles.
I'm
I
teasing.
mean, Richard's a fantastic spirit artist, but
Yes.
and
It's
I
fun to
really
tease him.
would I really wouldn't want to downplay his skills because they're
Sure.
brilliant. But I mean, I thought that was a really just magical and learning experience as well, because normally it would be Richard who says, "There's a lovely lady," or "There's a lovely gentleman," and da 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 da. And he was like, "I've got this person, and they are, and I feel this, and over to you." And I'm like,
Yeah. So you were able to then step
"That-
into that flow of the energy and
yeah,
trust in your own connection with spirit
mm,
in those moments. I think that's a big takeaway for those who are student mediums and
yeah,
listening and developing mediums that are listening to this podcast today, that you have to get to that deeper sense of trust, even if you have the I don't know. You don't
mm,
really have to know. You just have to relay the information, and
yeah,
some things will come more to light as you progress in the situation. And I do want to mention that when I've seen you and Richard do the tag team mediumship, Richard starts, then you move into the you're I can feel you're connecting in with the flow of the energy,
mm,
and that there's such power as you're speaking and conveying about the information. And
mm,
usually Richard might then look over at you and kind of check in a little bit with
mm,
your I kind of wonder what he's thinking in those moments, but then he goes back to it, and then as you said, it's like a duet,
yeah,
here are two forms of music that are going on. But when you're not with the spirit artist, Richard, when
mm,
you're with the other people, let's say on Zoom that you were describing, who
mm.
typically goes first in that? How did you decide who's the person who will go first?
Off the top of my head, I think it's maybe been a bit experimental, like, hey, I've got a connection, and why don't you link in? And then the other one might say, oh, I've got a connection, why don't you link in? And it's been interesting. I've done it quite a few times with a few different mediums, and I think one experience I had was I could link in with said medium and work with the communicator they had. But then when it was the other way round, they couldn't link in with the one I had. They got a different one.
Mm-hmm.
So I I don't know what to say about that, except that, maybe sometimes you gel better one way than another.
Right.
I mean, when Richard and I have worked together on the odd occasion, he's like, "Why don't you start first, and we'll see what happens." And we have done that, and it's worked. I have worked with other spirit artists, one other spirit artist recently. Um, and Sue Wood is her name, and she's also a very good spirit artist. And I thought, oh, this is weird. I feel, because I kind of feel like I'm in a team with Richard,
Right.
and
Have a comfortable connection there. Yes.
yeah, and I thought, well, you just have to be there for the spirit world. And I'll just do what I do with Richard. And it worked really well. And all I can say is um the best that I can describe from my perception is I I give space to the artist, but I'm connecting to their energy, but I'm not connecting to the spirit world. I'm connecting to their energy. And then it's like I can feel the spirit world stepping into our combined energy.
Mhm.
And so I have an essence of male or female, but I wait until the spirit artist has given information. And usually they will say male, and I'll be, oh, well, I got a male too. I'll wait. And so then it's like maybe that thoughtful look you see on me is perhaps me just making sure that I'm connected with the same communicator, that I'm getting the same information as what they're relaying, and then it's off. So, and I find that that works well, and I think it's important that we we're working in harmony. We're not working in competition.
Right.
And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge because if you're working with a sense of ego or competition, then I think it becomes combative in the energy, and it may well work, but I feel like it would be less fun and less interesting and a bit more sort of like, well, it's my turn and then it's my turn and then it's my turn and
Yes. Yes.
And I think you've seen sometimes when Richard and I work together, I might be aware of him pausing, and there's something in the energy of maybe I have an essence or a knowledge of when he wants to say something or not, and bring in information. So it might be that he's just pausing to check in and get more information, or it might be that he's tuning in on the same information and would like to add more, in which case I usually say, I know Richard wants to say something too, or I
Yes.
know whoever I'm working with wants to say something too, if it's a spirit artist, obviously. I think if you're working in tag team mediumship without a spirit artist, which is a different thing, you're just two mediums and one communicator, then I think it's really important that there's a respect between the mediums, and that there's a sense of joy that you're there for the spirit world and what they want to say, and not there to kind of, it's me, no, it's me, and kind of um try to outshine each other, that kind of thing. Give space
Mhm.
to each other so that there is that flow.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point that you're making. Very valid.
Mm.
That certain people are going to be able to enter into tag team mediumship, and others, it should not be something that they even make a foray into. So
Hmm.
it just depends on whether people can have that experience. That solo experience is just right for certain mediums, and
Mm.
having the tag team mediumship, it's such a unique expression of taking turns and not
Mm,
necessarily checking your watch. Well, they've talked for 5 minutes and now it's going to be my 5 minutes. There's none of that that has to be
yeah.
part of it. And I love your I want to reinforce this with our viewers today that um, with this, you mentioned that you are uniting first with the energy of the partner,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
That
So
you
it's
the
blending the
partner and you
power,
tag team.
my power with their power. So it becomes, I think I said earlier, it's like we create one big bubble of power.
Yes. And then you're connecting with conscious awareness to the spirit communicator that's coming in
Mm.
during that session. Is there any place in that your particular spiritual support team that you can feel them at work in any of this?
In terms of like a spirit team, like guides, that kind of thing, I would say no, because my primary focus is on the spirit communicator. And as far as I am aware, the role of our spirit team when we're doing evidential mediumship is maybe to organize the communicators in
Right.
the spirit world and
Yes.
kind of go, right, you're on, and whoa.
Yes.
And maybe just be the ushers, if you like,
Yes.
which may or may not work. And I think maybe they, a bit like at a spiritualist church, you have a booking secretary who says, right, I've got these dates. Penny Hayward, are you available for one? And oh yes, lovely, I'll book you in. So maybe the spirit world is like, right, our medium's going to be at that church, and you know, your family's going to be there or could be there if you get on it, and my medium will be good for you. You know, and
Yes.
so maybe there's a little bit of
There's
cooperation
an
on the other side behind.
orchestration that's
Yeah, an
happening here.
orchestration, like behind the scenes. But
Yes.
I don't think they're right there, and I
No.
certainly don't get the information from my guide. I have in the past once heard somebody say, "My guide is telling me that your father's in the spirit world, and my guide is telling me this," and I'm sorry, I'm not on board with that.
Right. I hear you. But I do feel that spiritual support team helps to, as the gatekeeper and
Mm,
bringing in high quality people from spirit that are going to be able to communicate effectively, to assist in that process,
yeah.
and to reinforce the energy flow that's
Yes.
happening. And it's very much being vibrationally attuned to
Mm,
those things. And having done that study and done that preparation, and I encourage people that if you're interested in tag team mediumship, really get your solo mediumship in place first. This is
for
not
sure.
something that Penny or I would recommend that you start with.
Absolutely. I'd really agree with that. I think that some people that might be a little bit nervous and a little bit perhaps insecure about their beautiful abilities, which we all are when we start. We're all like, oh, I don't know, and I'm not sure when we start.
Sure.
But I certainly am recalling an experience I had when I was reasonably well developed, and I had an experience of more professional, been around a lot longer medium who said, right, we're gonna do double links or tag team mediumship, and you start, I'll link in, and I did this with them, and it was real, I have to say, it was really uncomfortable because they kept cutting across some sensitive information. There was a young son who had passed, and and the mother, and it was all very sensitive. And then, you know, and there was a nice connection, and maybe it would have perhaps been better to go with the energy rather than just cutting across. And sort of later on, there was I felt that I was with somebody closer to me, and I'm like talking to them, and this person went, "No, it's over there," and it was really uncomfortable, and I wasn't maybe experienced enough to be more in my power to go, "No, well, I'm here," that kind of thing. And I think um tag team mediumship can be absolutely fun, amazing, wonderful, enjoyable, uplifting, but it can also, if you're not experienced enough, derail you and make you more insecure about yourself and your abilities. And the only thing that really helped me that particular day was a gentleman at the front that I was trying to work with, and I kept looking at, came up to me and simply said, "You were right," and walked off. So, and that was otherwise I would have been perhaps quite destroyed from the experience. So I think it's really important to, as you say, be a well-developed, established medium with a certain amount of confidence, not cockiness, but just confidence in your own mediumship, and then be sensitive to, does it feel right to work with this other person? The other person might be a lovely person. Great medium, but maybe just not the right energetic gel in a tag team situation.
Yeah,
So,
it's an important distinction that has to be made, and some of
mm,
these have to be delicately decided.
mm,
To really understand that you can flow with another person, and that there is that almost finishing each other's sentences
yeah,
feeling that has to happen. That's what Penny's talking about when you gelling with someone, that
mm.
you're so in the link, you're like mediumship twins at the moment.
Yeah, and actually it's really like that because it is almost sort of like an excitement that comes because maybe some information will be said and the other one's like, yeah, and this and blah 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 blah, and then it's like, oh yes, and that, yeah, it's a flow and a dance and it's almost like a, I don't know, like ballroom dancing. Um, there's a flow and an energy and a vibrancy to it rather than a sort of rigidity or something. But
And some people
um,
are just better at playing with others well.
yeah,
There's an element to that, and knowing, making that distinction for yourself. So I encourage the mediums listening today, be well developed in your own
mm,
solo mediumship before you enter into this, as Penny described in that perfect story, actually, for
mm,
this, that you may feel very drawn in one to one person while the other is drawn to another. So you have to know when the streams of energy have divided in that
mm.
sense, and that you're really, some people would say that there was a split link going on in the,
Yes,
right, so
yeah,
this is a split link situation that two mediums are having to handle. So
mm.
get used to understanding a split link as a solo medium before you enter into tag team mediumship.
Yeah, because you can have a split link on a tag team, and
Yes.
if you work well together, you can both handle the two.
Mhm.
Um, And but but yeah, I think that sometimes split links happen because the spirit world maybe have a number of similarities, even though they're completely different communicators for different recipients. And so they're like, but I want to get in and say something to my loved one. And so, they're using the energy in an intelligent way, but you as a medium have to be confident enough to go, oh, hang on a minute. This is what's going on here, and I'm there, and now I'm there, and that's finished there, and I'm finishing here. And and there does need to be a confidence in your own power and energy and understanding when there's a split link as much as a tag team link.
Yes, all these links. And I'll just throw another thing into the mix. On
Go on.
occasion, people will have scheduled a private session with me, and one of their other family members is scheduled with another medium, and they have appointments at the same time. And
Mm,
yet, each of their spirit communicators that are related to them can talk in both sessions.
yeah, it's
So
amazing.
it's incredible what spirit is able to do to come
Mm,
forward. They're like, well, if mom's over here, am I only going to hear from dad if for the other sister having the
mm,
session over there? And it's just kind of a lot of that sort of thing has to just flow and go away. That we,
mm.
that spirit is able to be in a lot of places at once and have
Yeah.
those communications be evidential and be effective in
Oh, you know
so
what's just come to me? Sorry to just talk over you.
yeah.
Is it spirit in multiple places at once? Or is it that the mediums are attuning their consciousness to the consciousness of the communicator? So the communicator's just relaxing back in their armchair going da 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 da. So they're going,
Either
maybe
way,
it's
right?
working like that in actual fact, that the
Yes.
spirit world's got a tag team link.
Like yeah, it's possible. There's the multitasking that's going on with all of this.
Yeah, because I mean, when you think about it, we are using a state of our consciousness to tap into the consciousness of the communicator as well. So maybe in that situation that you're talking about, the spirit communicator is going, right, I need to talk to both of them. They're at two different mediums. So I'm just gonna like stand here and let them connect with me and I'll manage it from there.
Well, it's the spirit communicator can have very different relationships, let's say between two sisters.
For
They have a great
sure.
relationship with one daughter and not with the other, and that can
Mm,
convey. Do you also find I know for myself, I can tell whether the spirit communicator is like, yes, I really like you as the medium. I really like because
yeah.
you can get a sense of that. And even in tag team mediumship, a spirit communicator may prefer to come forward with one medium, and that's why as a solo medium you have to really get that clear within yourself
Mm,
so that when tag team comes along, uh, if a spirit communicator is working more effectively with one medium, because the there's just throw another thing out there. Everybody has their dominant clairs, shall we say, the
hmm.
soul senses. So some people are very strongly clairvoyant, others are very strongly clairsentient, claircognizant, all the different things that can come in. And certain spirit communicators will be more effective with certain mediums with that have a clair that is very dominant, that they are like, oh yes, that's exactly the way I love to communicate. That comes easily to me. It's just like with people who have dominant learning styles. If they are
Yeah.
visual people, then they're more likely to come through as spirit communicators in a visual fashion. Or if they're
Mm,
feelers, they're more likely to come through in that fashion. Have you noticed this as well?
absolutely. And I would say that um to that end, it became important to me to develop all my sensitivities as the best I could
Yeah.
because there will be communicators that are going to be all feeling and no data. They're going to be like, okay, I'm mum, and anyway, I love my family, I love this, I love that, and I want to feed you, and they're all about, feelings, and then you will have. I get a lot of, I get a lot of uh, skeptical men from the spirit world, that are like, but I'm here because you're my family. So you're gonna have the um I'm aware of their resistance. Um, and then you've got to, so it's funny watching some not funny, haha, but it's interesting to watch some students because they're like, I've got a man, but I don't know, I'm not really getting anything and well I think he's gone away and it's like no he's still there and it's because he's trying to communicate that he wasn't a good communicator or he wasn't good with his emotions or that he was private and he's like well I'm not going to tell you all about myself until you know who I am
That's
you
right.
know so so I think our role as developing and experienced mediums is to be open and open up as much of our six senses as we possibly can because some communicators are going to use the cognizance and the audience and some are going to use the clairsentience and the clairvoyance so if yes I'm mostly clairsentient but there will be times when I'm mostly clairaudient and claircognizant because that's what the communicator
Yes.
likes to use more or I understand the information through those senses more about a communicator like that. So I think that your point's really, really good and valid, but I would want to just extend it a little bit to
Sure.
say, well, why should we limit ourselves? Maybe we should be as open to developing all our senses so that
Absolutely. Mhm.
we can work with more communicators in different ways. So.
And to your point of the resistant communicator, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's because they're having to learn the ropes, and they are
Hmm.
not quick on the uptake when it comes to mediumship, and now they're having to try to put it together on spirit side of life. And here we as
Yeah.
mediums are trying to get to know them within a couple of
Mm.
minutes.
Yeah.
So it's about whether they're really ready to play.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, I really feel for some people who say I've been to 50 mediums and my mom or my dad or my brother or someone really close to them, they never come through. They've not been through. They've been gone 25 years. I mean, I had one gentleman, he was in his maybe 80s at the time when I did a reading for him. And his mother came through, and at the end of it, he said, "You're the first medium that's brought my mother through, and she's been gone 50 years." You know, and so I think sometimes we just don't know why that is. Because 50 of our years or near enough to is a very long time to not hear from your loved one. And I don't think for a minute that it's because they're too busy, they can't be bothered, they've got other things to do. I'm sure that it's a combination of things that might be beyond our full comprehension. Maybe she's tried to come through other mediums, but they haven't got her to her satisfaction,
That's right.
or to his satisfaction.
There you go.
And so I think sometimes it's not for the lack of trying. I think that that you know, if it was easy, we'd all be doing it. We wouldn't need mediums, wouldn't we? If it was easy, wouldn't we?
We could we
We'd
could
all just be
talk
going,
ourselves right out of a job. I
well,
do
yeah.
feel now that there's so many things that are going on. Sometimes grief is a big part of it. Sometimes
Mm,
skepticism is a part of it. I mean, there's
hmm.
so many factors that are involved with this, and mediumship is one of those things that will constantly be evolving and growing. And
You'd hope
as
so,
we
yeah.
learn more about um, our own energy and being able to set aside our judgments and really enter into uh, that compassion that's necessary
Mm,
for this to unfold effectively, we'll get more and more evidence that will present.
yeah.
Any
Mm.
last things that you'd like to share with folks about tag team mediumship that you think would be great for them to know, whether they're observing tag team mediumship happening or whether they're wanting to take part in it?
I think the whether they're observing or taking part, the primary should be to be um, in a place in your mind, like your consciousness, in your heart, and in your power that is of a sense of wonder and joy. What is going to happen? And to flow with that, to be in the moment with it, and not necessarily, definitely not preempting or judging, or whether you're the medium's working or observing. I think really to sort of be in a sort of sense of, wow, that's amazing, that's happening, and to be present with it is probably the most important thing that I could say. Present and joyful.
Yes. Because mediumship is a sacred joy, and it's
Mm.
not about the spook and boo and all those other things that the movies try to convey. There is that beauty of connection and
Mm.
communication beyond so-called death. And people can have those amazing, incredible bonds. And
Mm.
there is such a use for love in the world, and knowing that
Yeah.
it never dies, and that whether it's solo mediumship or tag team mediumship, whatever form that may take for you, that it there's such a joy, a deep, abiding joy that can happen in those moments when you see someone go, "Oh my goodness, my loved one is still here, still
Yeah.
caring about me, and still wanting to uh, reach across the veil and
Yeah.
be with
But
their."
I think as well, it's about sometimes the communicators bring joy and laughter and funny memories, and sometimes, they bring apologies. Sometimes, they bring healing of some sort, and I think it's about honoring what they want to give, because they're the ones who know what's needed. They're the ones who will know what they want to portray, but also what the recipient needs. And um, I think it's important to recognize that yes, we will be in our grief, but isn't it wonderful when they show that they've still got their humor, and they've got this funny story they remember, that and they bring that upliftment. It's like you say, it's not all doom and gloom, but it doesn't also have to be all sorrow and woe.
Exactly, exactly. And I think people are so surprised because they would expect mediums that are having to be so close to the idea of death, the concept of
Mm,
death. But a lot of mediums are very joyful people because
mm,
they have not just the faith, but they have a deep abiding knowledge that
mm,
they are souls and that they
yeah,
continue on, and there's such a foundation of comfort that we are able to live from. It helps to know what we know and believe what we believe and experience these
yeah.
things. And what a great time to be a medium.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I had a little thought while you were talking about evolving our mediumship, and I'm sure I've said it before, but there might just come a time when even now we as mediums need to talk in emojis. You know, and maybe we really need to work on our clairvoyance
On
to
our
know
symbol
whether it's a
interpretation. Yeah.
or a
Right.
because we do shortcut language now into little pictures and emojis, and this sort of thing, and so
Oh, that's
um
funny.
yeah, maybe we need to be mindful of that, and sure, just like that wonderful communicator that was a female impersonator that Richard and I had the pleasure to work with, we're moving into a time now where people identify as. So it's going to be really complicated
Very complicated.
to work as a medium, and we're going to have to really be in that presence.
Yeah,
to
there's a
be able
very
to say,
modern energy that's starting to unfold. Even within the last 5 years, that mediumship
yeah,
has shifted in the decades of me being a medium now.
mm,
It's been fascinating to see how that evolves, and that we
mm,
have to be keep our finger on the pulse, and maybe like you say, the emojis. Oh, that's funny. The shortcuts. But I do feel spirit gives us signs when we're recognizing spirit contact. A lot of times it's
for
like a
sure.
text message that we're getting from them of, "Hey, I love you." It's not
Mm,
it's not a big, huge lecture that they're wanting to offer. It's a quick, "Hey, I'm so excited about you. Good luck with the interview," kind of thing. Like
yeah.
it'll be those kinds of messages that just
Mm.
show that people are around us in the everyday sense, and they're not invading our lives 24/7.
Oh gosh,
Nobody's that
no.
interesting. That's
No.
why they edit reality TV, right?
Exactly.
Oh, well, it's been such a joy to be with you today, Penny, and thank you so
And
much
you,
for coming on Wednesdays with Willa to talk about tag team mediumship, because it's it's something that is fascinating to people, but also
mm,
for some is going to be more of a reality than for others. But now people can
mm,
understand it a bit better as they may see other people enter into or offer those kinds of demonstrations of mediumship. So thank you again.
for
And
sure. Thank you. Thanks for having
yes,
me. I've enjoyed it.
and I encourage people to check out Penny's website. I'll have that linked in here as well. It's Penny Hayward, but then it's like, because it's UK, there's a different,
.co.uk.
yes, .co.uk. It's not the .com like we're used
No.
to here in America. So I just wanted to make that distinction for folks. And we can't wait till we see you in person here in Lilydale. Hope it's sooner rather than later. And
Me too. Me too.
thank you
I'm
so
sure
much.
it will.
All right,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you next week, same time, same place, for another great show with another wonderful guest. All right. Bye bye, everyone.